Hello! This is Masters Academy Talk Show with Westlin and Jules.
Hello.
Hi. So, what the two of us are here to do is talk about all things Minion Masters, whether it means complaining about balance or talking about the competitive scene or whatever we find interesting on Reddit, as well as doing deck building and strategy tips for people who are interested in the game. I guess it's about time that we introduce who we are and why you should listen to us over anybody else giving advice on the internet. And sorry, guys, there's no Jules cam, but we do have a picture of Volko there for him.
Yeah, thank you. That's all I need. There's no more.
So I guess first with who I am, I've been playing the game for over a year. Consistent GM player. I played in the KPC, which is the King Puff Cup, the main tournament scene of the game. Highest place finish was second in a tournament, and also competed in the invitational event, which is the end of season qualifier. And then my other thing is I'm also a caster for the KPC.
Caster for the KPC, one of the best.
One of the
I would
best.
say.
And I believe you have quite a bit of qualifications as well.
Well, I've been a player since October 2017, so way back, and I've just been super active in the community since then. I remember I started learning about the game in Gamers stream, who's if you're in chat, and I've been playing in tournaments like a year after.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just started falling in love with the competitive scene and mostly the community in general. That's something I really loved about Minion Masters. And then just got to be an organizer in the KPC. I've been streaming in KPC, casting as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just amazing things in the community so far.
And recently you organized a tournament, which I casted in, the Prince Puff Cup, which is our first subject of discussion for today. So we recently we had a really interesting finals between Faflorian and Sunless. And I think the most important thing to take away is actually, well, one, the Prince Puff Cup. Do you want to explain the format real quick?
So yeah, what we did was introduce sideboard, which we did in Prince Puff Cup 1, but back then we used the whole card pool for sideboard. We felt it was too much, so we just lowered it to 10 cards. And we were allowing people to sideboard in between games. So they would submit 4 decks, and the game 1 would just be with the submitted decks. And after that, they will be able to sideboard with the 10 cards they selected, which made things more tricky whenever you were trying to mind game with your opponent, which makes things a lot interesting.
Yeah, this was an interesting tournament because a lot of times we haven't seen sideboarding before. And one of the funnest things, I think we're going to just jump into talking about decks right away. I think we're going to talk about Sunless's decks. Here we go. I got Sunless's decks up on screen. The big deck that we saw from Sunless here was this APEP.
I think. Dude. Don't get me started with his RNG. Come on.
We saw some. So with this is a future present cycle deck. I played it before. I actually play it a lot on ladder, and I played it in the King Puff Invitational. It's the APEP one that's on screen. I played that list except for a Divine Warrior in place of the Tranquil Shihao. And I think it was originally, we did have 3 cards banned in the Prince Puff Cup, one of them being Divine Warrior, which is probably why it's not in this list. And the other 2 being Scrat Tank and Fire Imp.
Correct.
Okay, so with this Sunless deck, this APEP deck, it's 4 1 costs, a Sniper, a Zhao, Flightless Dragons, and then Tranquil Shihao, and it's got 2 spells in it. The Magma Storm, and then the main reason why this deck was frustrating was this future present. So what were some of the things that we saw from this? We saw Sunless pull a second copy of Flightless Dragons, and for perk 3, get a second copy of Tranquil Shihao in his list.
Which is disgusting.
Yeah. So for new people, the reason why he's included these two cards in this list is they're actually meant to work together. Now, Flightless Dragons is one of the best bang for your buck as far as DPS per mana cost. And Tranquil Shihao is a solid tank at its mana cost, and it heals up after it leaves combat. So you can put a Tranquil Shihao down to absorb damage, and then put the Flightless Dragons in right after, and have them melt whatever target you're trying to kill. And so doubling down on that combo basically meant he could create some really strong pushes. And Flightless Dragons, I guess I'm not sure where you rank them in the game, but they're what I think is in the top 5 cards in the game right now.
Yeah, definitely. The DPS is just mental.
And I think what we've seen them a lot in the competitive scene, especially from a player that did not compete in this tournament, Cat.
Oh, sadly, we didn't see Cat in the Prince Puff Cup.
And for viewers who aren't here, I widely consider Cat to be, or sorry, people who don't know Cat, I widely consider Cat to be the best player in the game right now. And I think quite a few people agree with him, or at least put him in the top 5 players for sure. And
yeah,
you'll see him on the leaderboard a lot. And one of the things that he put in every single deck in competitive, I think except for his Bordar, was these Flightless Dragons.
They are so reliable, then you just cannot include them. They're so good in every situation, wherever you would play that or something similar, like a Scrat Horde.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, one of the big differences is that vulnerability to spells, where Scrat Horde is 1 mana less. It is better at a few different things. The combo is a little bit better with Ratbo Staka, and against when you're looking for a multi-hitting unit. Like when you're having a multi-hitting unit, yeah, the extra hits are nice that the Scrat Horde can block, but they also die very quickly, especially to Shockrock or Daggerfall.
Or just a pair of Marines behind a unit you're trying to kill, which makes it impossible for you to play the Scrat Horde.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so with the vulnerability of Scrat Horde, it just means Flightless Dragon has kind of taken that role as the swarm DPS unit in this game. And the only other card that really kind of fits in a similar role is Morgrul, which we see in the Volko deck here from Sunless. Which I think we should talk a little bit about this Volko deck design. And I think you are probably more of an expert on Volko than I am. If you have the list in front of you, I think you could cover this one here.
It's literally one of the lists I've been running in Volko, well, prior in tournaments as well. But instead of Morgrul, I was using a Spear Throwers, and instead of like regular Spear Throwers, and instead of a Screaming Scrat, I was using a Curse Bearer.
Mm-hmm.
Because, well, the Tantrum Throwers are simply great to remove Zhao or a Dragon Whelp if you have the 3 of the Tantrum Throwers.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of cycle cards it's got, it's really well balanced to keep the pressure on the other player, no matter what the master is. And it's really good in defense and offense. It's really well built.
One of the things I noticed is this is the only deck he's running that does not run a Zhao Long.
Yeah.
And I think what's going on here is that he's taking advantage of, well, one, Zhao Long just took a 5 damage nerf, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but he also replaced it with with Dragon Whelp. So Dragon Whelp fills a similar role as the Zhao Long by being, one of your flying damage units. But on top of this, Dragon Whelp, Flightless Dragons are on my brain. Dragon Whelp does 50 DPS opposed to the 20 of a Zhao Long, and also it's a melee unit, which synergizes with Volko's perk 3.
Yeah, pretty much you replace Zhao with the Dragon Whelp, mainly because it helps you a lot better in situations where you need to kill a Soul Stealer or Harbinger faster and take less damage. So again, as you said, the Zhao taking 5 damage is a penalty, and the patch notes and the balance changes makes Dragon Whelp a lot more like a reasonable pick instead of the Zhao.
And that's one of the things with Volko is that we see a little bit more anti-air brought in this deck. I mean, he brought
Yeah.
in 3 full anti-air units plus the spear throwers to bring it up to about 3.5 anti-air units. And on this quick cycle, it's most of his deck that he's playing is going to have some sort of anti-air because of Volko's inability to deal with it on his own.
He was also saving the Dragon Whelp every time. So he was saving the Dragon Whelp for either bridge taking from other ground minions or just keeping it in stored for whenever he needed to defend against like a Soul Stealer or something. So he was playing really, really smartly this same Volko list.
Mm-hmm. And looking at his sideboard, so one of the things we haven't really discussed is that sideboard strategy hasn't really existed in the tournament scene before the Prince Puff Cup. So Florian and Sunless took 2 different approaches to the sideboard strategy, and I guess we'll talk about Sunless's first. The cards that he put in, he threw in a Beam of Doom, he had a Magma Storm, Crossbow Guild, Defenso. A lot of these, and obviously the Blastmancer is going to show up in everybody's sideboard in case someone brings out a Rappo. But a lot of these cards are counter decks or are good against other strategies that you see coming out. Like the Curse Bearer is another card that, you see someone bringing out a lot of tanks, I'm going to bring in this Curse Bearer. And a lot of these were cards that can kind of be that can flex into any deck, which is probably the main thought process when you're kind of building these sideboards is, all right, I know I'm up against this master or this kind of deck. What tools am I going to bring in to change my deck so it can deal with these?
Yeah, and is for Sunless, he was, for example, using this Defensive Chopper in the sideboard. Whenever he ran into a Ravager, where he knew he was going to run into Ravager 100%, and use this Chopper into the Brutus, which is really good.
One thing we also saw him is he brought in Magma Storm against Miloweens as a tool to deal with the Bridge Shrine.
The Bridge Shrines, yeah.
Which I think brings us on to the Florian's decks here. Let's talk about this Milo that we saw just being really frustrating.
Yeah.
So Bridge Shrine Milo is... I hate playing against Milo, guys. I'm going to be honest, Milo is very frustrating. It's a tough deck to deal with. You have to put a lot of pressure on a Bridge Shrine Milo because Perk 3 Miloween will overrun you.
He was also playing the Howling Moon really smartly, and whenever he had to sideboard, he was picking the correct cards against every single deck he was going to run up against. And bring in the Black Hole to save the Wolves, or just changing the deck completely when he did with the Spawners, the Totem and the Guild, which was really interesting. I would have never expected it.
One of the things that I liked is he was deciding between Blue Golem and the Wolves when he was going into a matchup. So if he thought that they were going to sub in a Defensive Chopper, he actually swapped out the Howling Moon and brought in the Blue Golem instead. So that way he would actually have the counter to the Defensive.
Yeah.
But that Spotters match was a really interesting, maybe not mind games, but it was an interesting strategy. So what we saw from Florian is that he actually brought some tools that kind of changed the style of his deck. With the 2 different spawners, the Crossbow Guild and the Swarmer Totem. But then also he brought in the Spirits, and he brought that out into his Stormbringer as a means to give his Soul Stealer an extra 200 health and buff up other units.
Which is really strong.
Yeah, and so this was kind of where I saw a little bit of a different philosophy between Florian and Sunless. So Sunless went and kept all of his decks with the same style for every time that he played them, but he brought in cards that would help bring that deck that he practiced on and just made it a little bit better at taking on a different type of opponent. Where Florian was able to change his decks so they became different decks. Now
we've seen Sunless do this thing where if he'd run against the statue, where he played against the Stormbringer, he would run the Curse Bearer, and Florian would just he just removed the statue and played something else, which really brings us to the mind games the sideboard brings.
And so I guess we might as well talk a little bit about like the preparation for this tournament versus a KPC. So this is where you almost have to like make your decks a little more well-rounded in the KPC format. I think. I mean, I didn't play in this one. I did watch it and cast it, but you look at some of these decks and they're a little more specialized than maybe like some prior ones that you would see.
Yeah.
Like
I feel like the Prince Puff Cup also is a place where you just, since it's casual and there's no like money involved in the prizes, you're allowed to like meme a bit and try some different styles you haven't played before in a tournament.
mhm.
And for example, here in Florian, we see like there's 4 combustions. I know the card is good, but
Mhm.
it's something you wouldn't expect in all 4 of your decks.
Mhm. And give me a sec. I'm gonna pull up another deck that I didn't. I'm gonna download another deck real quick. I want to talk about what Tomato Mato brought here to the tournament. So Tomato Mato did. So when we're talking about people who memed a little bit, that's where Tomato Mato definitely did a little bit of that with his decks, and he brought in the Nether Step with a
Yeah.
statue, but
And an ATG drone.
and an ATG drone. So that was it was a little bit surprising to see those cards. And I thought it was really exciting for me to like. I love seeing new cards show up. Like that's always going to
Yeah.
be fun. I think everybody else likes to see new cards. Like the competitive scene. Here we go. All right. Yeah, so Tomato Mato decks. This was the other one that I thought was really fun. Is there was quite a few. Okay, Tomato Mato took this opportunity of a casual deck to bring in some pretty funny decks. His now I actually played against this King Puff list, and I actually think it's a pretty solid list.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we saw too much of it in the tourney, but I do want to highlight that the combination of the Chain Lightning, uh, the meme roller, and that's cannon roller for people who don't like calling everything meme. And then that behind the living statue creates a pretty frustrating combo. I think Tomato Mato may have found a little bit of a niche that he can lie in if he wanted to keep playing this kind of a deck in the future.
Yeah, sadly, his King Puff kept getting banned because, well, people obviously considered the King Puff to be the biggest threat and
Mhm.
saw the Stormbringer and the Mortar more like memes and were like, hey, I can play against this and win easily.
And that's where sometimes they were kind of wrong. That
Yeah.
Stormbringer list did actually catch quite a few people off guard. What I actually like is this living statue and the walking blind ape. So it's kind of a funny interaction. Is what will happen is the walking blind ape can follow behind the living statue. It will take one hit, and then there's a brief period of time where they're all going to re-aggro to the living statue, and whatever you have pop out is now free to fight whatever's around them.
Yeah. In most cases, the outcomes you get from the Walking Blind Aid will always help you, unless obviously you get something like a ghost, and
Yeah.
it takes something like a Scrat, and it's not going to do anything really to support your statue. But most of the times you get something like a Bounty Sniper or a Whirly Scrat, and it's just going to do wonders.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I think our next thing is we're going to talk about. We just got a balance patch recently, and we got a new master. So we gotta
Oh,
talk.
boy.
We gotta talk about Morelia. All right, guys.
It's time.
It's about time we have this conversation. I think we've all known that this is coming, but Morelia is OP, guys. She is quite frankly not in so the design idea of Morelia I like, where you have a character who has a new spell that does one of 4 things. And it's supposed to be this versatile master who on the fly, you're like, okay, what decision do I need to make? I need to make a quick decision. How do I do this? And pick between these 4 should be equally useful spells.
Should be.
Should be. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of things I like about her. I like the design idea. I like the idea of this, like, or I like the idea of like, all right, what am I going to pick? It's a master you would have a steep learning curve, because I think she does have a learning curve, or should. But there's kind of a few dominant decks that are going around, what I'm seeing on the leaderboard. Is
Yeah.
it's being used with Empowered Soul Stealer and Lone Wolf. That's probably, I don't know if you guys have played against it on the leaderboard, but running into a Lone Wolf Empowered Soul Stealer deck is probably one of the most frustrating things in the world. It's kind of it's really strong, guys. It's kind of an auto climb deck right now, I would say.
The problem is that those kind of decks are already frustrating to play against on any other master. And the moment when you see them on Morelia, you know you're going to have a rough game.
Yeah. Like I've seen I've seen people try and build Morelia around other factors, like build around her spells. I've seen people try and build around using a mix of just the damage and the skeletons. But ultimately, all of the strong decks, like the ones that I found super frustrating, were all based around the spirits.
Yeah. The thing is, as you mentioned, she should have some kind of a learning curve, but you don't see it because there's options that are clearly better than others. Like, as you mentioned, the spirits. The fact that you can give in perk 1 minion 200 HP, and then on perk 2 just scale to 3 minions and make the perk somewhat equal to like Apep's perk 3, but instead of a perk 3 you get it in perk 2. It's really strong.
Well, and you know what it is, so it's more consistent.
Exactly.
And it's, as we see in the comments, Squid says, you don't have to face Lone Wolf Empowered Soul Stealer Guardian anymore. Now you're facing Spirited Up Empowered Soul Stealer and Lone Wolf.
Yeah.
Which really feels about the same and probably harder to deal with. So this is kind of bringing the whole discussion of, it's spirits that are OP though. This whole change to the spirit setup, I think initially, when it first came out, I think, or like when they did the spirit changes, there's been a few spirit decks going around. But that 4 costs of having to play the spirits, to cast 3 up, to get 3 200 health targets, or give 3 targets 200 health, it's a little bit hard, like when you get those good targets out because of the mana investment. But when it's free, it's kind of like a free Bats. How Bats is a lot harder to utilize at 4 mana. But then when you bring it down to 0 from a free APEP, it becomes insane.
Yeah. It turns Bats into win pretty much. And the thing is, back when the spirits were reworked and we still didn't have Morelia, there were people that, as you said, bringing out some decks with the spirits, and they wouldn't be like so effective. But the decks that I would say they were the most effective back then was if you would play Spirit Mancer, and then you would get a lot of minions buffed. But most of the times it was still not enough.
Yeah, like I was playing Spirit Mancer Ratbow from a list inspired by Croker X's Spirit Mancer Ratbow, but I'd use Spirit Vessel. I'd bring Spirit Vessel into my Mordar, but I wasn't building just a deck around spirits. The only one that I saw was the Lone Wolf, or sorry, not the Lone Wolf, the Lycanthropy on the Frenzied Swarmers, where you would drop the spirits, play the Frenzied Swarmers, and then on top of that you would then Lycanthropy them, and then get 2 super buffed Rage Frenzied Wolves on your face, and that deck is very frustrating.
It is. Sadly, there's a lot of decks that utilize the spirits now. But as you said, the Wolves or the Empowered Soul Stealer are clearly maybe top 1 and 2 of those decks.
Well, right now, what everybody's playing is like any deck that you've been playing on another master, you can just port over to Morelia quite easily.
Yeah.
I switched my Mordar deck to a Morelia deck. with a really high curve and just relied on the fact that I don't need to cycle that fast because it's on a 30-second timer. So I can play a heavy deck and know that I'm going to get those spirits when I need them.
I mean, if you give a spirit to like a Harb or any other, like a Bara, it's something you would usually struggle on dealing with. And
Mm-hmm.
now it also has 200 HP, like extra. It's just really tough, and it gets to a point where it happens once, and it's already, and it's like, okay, it's one of these games.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, over the course of time, they cycle faster and faster, and it gets harder, and you just lose, and really badly.
Well, and I think one of the frustrating things is that Empowered Soul Stealer doesn't die to anything instantly, unless you're running like a Beam of Doom or a Magma Storm.
Yeah.
And so decks that aren't running those two cards are going to struggle against this deck that's showing up. So the other thing we haven't talked about is her auto attack. What do you think about having a slow on an auto attack?
Well, it at first I was like, it's actually amazing
Mm-hmm.
because you wouldn't have to worry about cards like a Cleaver or a Rammer like instantly whenever they come to your face.
Mm-hmm.
Because usually you'd struggle to detect if a Cleaver is an illusory Cleaver or a real one. And now you can just see, okay, it slows down, it takes damage, it's real, and then you play something to block it.
Mm-hmm.
But right now it seems like really inconsistent. Some of the minions don't like get slowed down, but then that's an issue where they can get fixed. But it's actually really interesting, and I feel like it's really good.
Yeah, so what I thought was kind of weird is it kind of goes into the same design space as Diona's Traps a little bit.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of weird to have these two masters that came out back to back, and they both got a very unique auto attack. So it was cool to see that since these masters came out a lot later than, because there's that huge gap between Milloween's release and Diona's release, and then we got a much shorter gap between Diona and Morelia. But what their auto attacks essentially do is they slow down something from getting to face.
Yeah.
And Diona's can be they're pretty equivalent as far as like dealing with Rammer. I mean, you freeze it in place or you slow it down. I mean, it stops it for about the same amount of time. Diona's a little bit better at Swarm Clear, which is better, but Diona's got the longer range, and that slow, I think, is probably a little more effective against like a Cleaver coming in.
Yeah. The thing with Diona is that you still have to gamble a little bit if you are, well, if you're the enemy team, the enemy player, and you play against like a Diona, then you can just know where the trap is going to be, and then you can just send the Cleaver to that bridge. And with Morelia, the thing is just not going to happen because Morelia is just going to target the minion and slow it down.
We got a mention from Delta BBX about running Rammer and Morelia decks. And I have seen this a little bit in a variant. I think I've saw a few people running this. I think Cat was running this on the ladder, where he was taking a Chain Lightning and Fireball both in the deck and getting their spell cost reduced. So when this Rammer came in, he had the Chain Lightning and the Fireball coming in as 2 mana cards at perk 2.
Wow. That's actually really good if I think about it.
Yeah, the design space for her to play a standard mid-range deck, she can really take the role of any master right now. Actually the versatility of her it's still there. Now I think the stuff that's really problematic is just that spirits. Like that is hugely problematic. You can put any mid-range unit. I mean, you imagine even just doing an old Cat style deck, and for people who don't know what that is, that usually means including Divine Warrior, Zhao Long, Flightless Dragons, Fire Imp, Scrat Tank in your deck. Oh,
yeah.
Those 5 cards show up and then cycle. But you can get those spirits over to a Fire Imp with 200 extra health. That's pretty frustrating. I mean, even an extra 200 health on the Scrat Tank with the Fire Imp and then a Zhao, that's a pretty imposing group. I did have a little bit of fun with the Master though. I was playing some Blind Dates, and
Ooh.
yeah, Blind Dates are one of the fun cards for her because you can get two of them in your deck, get them for a mana, lower them both down to 2 mana, and then save up for a big push. And then if
Just
you,
drop them both, everything on the same lane?
yep, and then on top of that,
Wow.
if you wait long enough so your spirit's about back up or your spell book's about back up, then you can drop the spirits or the damage or skeletons with it as well. So you can it kind of lets you save up your mana or postpone a push. And I thought that was a fun way to play her, but that's not what's dominating the leaderboard right now and
Yeah.
what's being frustrating. And people are not going to gravitate towards the style that's just purely fun. People are going to play what wins. And right now, what wins is putting spirits on Empowered Soul Stealer and just being oppressive as possible.
The life drain option in the book is actually really it's in my opinion one of the most interesting ones.
Mm-hmm.
Since not only you can get healed up but deal damage to the minions. Like minions like a sniper just insta die from it.
Mm-hmm. I think the visual on that is a little misleading because it comes out and looks like it's multi-hits, but it's actually a single target hit. So if a unit is shielded, they will not take damage.
Yeah.
And that's a visual thing where they need. I was wondering. Okay, there's a few frustrations that I have with Morelia from a visual standpoint. One is that spell makes it look like it's a multi-hit. It should be either a multi-hit or it should have used a different visual and like just have one orb coming out. Is one of my things that I think I would like to see changed if they could. And the other one is I didn't like the images on the book itself. I think at a glance, it is hard to tell which one's going to be what spell.
Yeah. Unless you know by heart which is which, then you just have to like read every single one. And it takes time and maybe you just miss something in the match.
Yeah, and it's kind of an unfortunate addition of a learning curve that I don't think was intended. I thought that like it's really obvious which one's the one that reduces the spell. But yeah, as Dewey mentions here, a color code would be helpful. I mean, they are all the same color, so it's just you just have less to register when you're learning them. And I definitely had to spend a lot of time my first few games. Like I could never do the damage in a quick reaction because I could never process, okay, is this the spirit, is this the skeletons, or is this the damage? Obviously the spell reduction was obvious because it was had the one mana.
The only one that costed, 1 mana.
And should this whole spell book just always cost 1 mana? Like, or I mean, obviously the spirits are the strongest point of this. Should it cost mana? What do you think they should be doing to change this? I have a few ideas, but kind of curious what you're thinking.
Well, on the life drain, I feel that could cost 0, no problem. Mm-hmm. Now, the spell cost, it feels weird making me pay to then reduce the cost of something. Mm-hmm. I feel like you just make it for free and then not reduce the mana cost by 2 on like perk 2. Just reduce 1 card by 2, not 2. And well, the spirits, if it's going to be the same amount of spirits, then it definitely has to. You either have to pay or just change whatever you get, because the amount of spirits getting from perk 1 spirit and then getting 3, it's just a massive jump.
We got a mention of a deck I haven't seen before. Florian mentions, anybody tried the Morelia D-Net Spirit Infusion deck? Wow, that sounds pretty obnoxious because you get that free spell out there, which should help with the D-Nest. And although I love shrimp armies, I've definitely played the double D-Nest Setsu and double D-Nest Milloween. And I've definitely enjoyed. I think they're fun decks to play, but man, they could be frustrating to play against if you don't have the right answers.
Yeah.
But
D-Nest is one of those cards that's super fun, but rarely you get a win from it.
Yeah, it's kind of in a weird design space because in the past it used to be one of the strongest cards in the game, as it used to spawn flying units.
Yeah.
Or actually spawn the dragon whelps instead of a flightless dragon. It's a card that I hope sees some changes at some point, but don't expect anything substantial to like fix it properly. But yeah, so my one thing with Morelia, all the complaints aside, she's actually fun.
Yeah.
You know, when Diona came out, not a lot of people gravitated towards her right away. This Diona came out as this high skill master. Her second perk you get no interaction with, basically. Um, she had bugs with her trap placement, which still exist. Um, she ended up, and people didn't find out where her strengths were right away anyways, where it turns out that she was really good as an aggressive master who could push a rammer onto face using the totem and using another spell to supplement it.
Yeah.
But yeah, she just wasn't as flashy as basically any of the other masters. So she's kind of fallen into a similar popularity I've seen as like Ratbo or Volko on ladder. Like she
Yeah.
pretty quickly went down to that bottom three of the least played masters. Um,
The problem with Diona feels like whatever deck you play with her, it just feels better on another master.
mhm,
I try to play like a spammy Diona, and it feels like, okay, I could just rather play on a Ratbo.
mhm. There was one archetype that I saw and that I played a bit is just the Rammer Chain Lightning or I think Rammer Beam of Doom. So Deadshot 101 used to be playing a Diona deck that was pretty good, taking advantage of Tranquil Sheehow with the traps. So you could use those traps to shift a trade, as well as a lot of pushing Rammer to face. And then kind of just ignored playing defense from what I was saying or seeing. But yeah, right
Yeah.
now, you're going to play a different master. I mean, her overlap on aggressive decks is the same spot that Setsu fills. So it's like, do I want to play an aggressive Diona deck, or do I just want to jump face with Setsu?
Yeah. It feels like if you would play the same deck on both masters, it would always be better to play on Setsu.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we're going to quick run through the patch notes here. There's a few other changes that got made. So I think the first one we got to talk about is Azali no longer affects flying minions. And that was basically a direct nerf to Bats, Bats, Bats.
Yeah.
I guess what's your opinion on that one?
Well, it was definitely one of the most frustrating decks to play against.
Mm-hmm.
If it was like one combo of Bats, 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 Azali, then most of the times you would be ready if you had like one counter to it.
Mm-hmm.
But as we've seen in ladder, people don't like playing combos only once, and they bring wildcards into the table.
I guess it's not fun to have to sideboard encounters or to edit your deck because something like this is prevalent. Like if you're running a no spell deck, Bats, Bats, Bats Azali was pretty impossible to deal with.
Yeah. It pretty much the balance change. It looks like it goes around the Bats, 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 and it definitely feels like a good change in my opinion. Because at first Azali was meant to be like, okay, swarm with Azali and protect everything and try to kill your opponent in one push. But then Bats came out and it was, oh boy, it was really OP.
Yeah, what I thought was kind of weird is how long it took before it became popular, since it existed from the get-go. You know, because Bats, Bats, Bats was released at 3 mana. It was a nightmare. Everybody hated it. They hot fixed it, but the combo didn't get popular until quite a bit later. Where its initial
the prop horde.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, people were playing Propeller Horde with Azali mainly because of the combustion, and you would get two more scrats. So it would be 12 scrats, and Bats you would get like 8
and that's
at most.
And that's when combustion could hit face hard.
Yeah. Now I feel like the combo changed towards Bats mainly because Bats deal more damage, but also they can teleport towards other minions, and they would actually go and hit something on face. If they are already hitting face and you play some Marines, they will teleport towards the Marines.
Mm-hmm.
And it just makes the combo stronger.
And the next change is the buff to Nervier, the Fallen. So now does 80 damage over 4 seconds versus 20 damage ticks once per second, which doesn't really change a whole lot. But the main thing is she got 400 more health.
Yeah.
this change, she was actually pretty weak if you were just playing her outside of Morelia. No one was playing the dragon, and I think the buff was needed.
Yeah,
But
for such a hard setup,
mhm,
getting like an 800 HP, no, 1800 HP dragon wasn't enough.
mhm. But the changes, but with Morelia's release, it almost made it a bad change because now Nervier is tied to this master. And what we didn't talk about was Morelia's perk 3 and how oppressive it is having that spell come out plus the dragon. And it can be frustrating, well, to have that 6-mana dragon come out when you already feel like you've been oppressed the entire match by this master.
The thing is, for example, well, in 1v1s, it's really strong.
Mhm.
And it's not like it costs 6 mana. They put the perk as an equivalent in Terra Brutus. And I think even if you pay 6 mana, it doesn't. There's no similarities. The dragon is just too tanky, and the fact that it can hit both ground and air for massive amount of damage and in a really long range, it's really OP.
Mm-hmm. And I actually have a video from Reddit related to this dragon here.
Oh boy.
All right. So I think everybody needs to take a look at this. So this is the ultimate strat with Nivir here. So you see we have a lot of pressure on her face and the greatest use of Magma Storm I've ever seen.
Man. That's one happy teammate.
Leaves the other ally at 20 health when they prematurely Magma Storm. And then the game turns around and they lose. I freaking love that video. It cracked me up a lot when I saw that.
God damn it.
I'm just imagining being in the game and then you're like, all right, we're going to win here. And then your ally plays a Magma Storm. It makes you lose the game when you only needed one more tick from that Magma Storm to land. Like it was, if one more of those magma balls landed, they would have won the game. Or if he waited like a second, but instead he killed the entire push, which you didn't need to play. It was definitely one of those I'm BMing kind of moves, like when you beam Rip or something. Oh my god, that was it was one.
Was one of the best throws I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where you almost are proud of yourself for throwing it that exactly.
Yeah.
And back to some changes here. We got the small buff to Ratbo. His auto attack went from 5 to 6. Ratbo has felt a little on the weak side. This is a nice change, but it's not going to push him into relevancy in the ladder, from my opinion. We got a change to Snake Druid, goes from 60 health to 80 health, and its root duration goes from 2 seconds to 6 seconds. It's a welcome change to see a buff to Snake Druid, but he still dies to Daggerfall. And I don't see this as pushing Snake Druid into any sort of relevancy either.
Yeah.
I think as long as that unit dies to Daggerfall, people are not going to want to play it, even if Daggerfall's not that relevant. And air units that only target ground can seem a little bit weak too. Snake Druid loses to Plasma Marines, or at least I think it still does.
Yeah, it's really not worth the investment.
I've seen, I think, FFA play Snake Druid with spirits before, and maybe with Morelia, people will bring the Snake Druid out and give it an extra 200 health on top of that. But yeah, 80 health just won't be enough to bring Snake Druid into relevancy. Last buffs before we talk about the main one that we were just discussing here today. Stormy got nerfed. It no longer stuns itself, so he fires a little bit faster. His range got reduced to 6, and his speed got increased to 5. Basically, the Stormy combo got nerfed in another way, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but the Stormy Priestess combo kind of died with this one. It's really hard to pull off now.
Yeah, luckily. It was a really needed change.
Yeah, I'm happy with this change. I think this puts Stormy into a better area. I've felt like I run snipers in almost all my decks, so I've been able to just use snipers to kill it. But it is a hard card to deal with the priestess. I've definitely lost to players that just got that priestess guardian combo with the Stormy and then just died. And that doesn't feel very good, but I think this is a good way to bring him to what he was supposed to be without just completely neutering him.
Yeah.
So I'm happy with this change. The Undying Skeleton and Curse Bearer gets 10 more damage. It goes up from 50 to 60 damage. So this is kind of an odd change to me. I didn't think Curse Bearer was necessarily a weak card, because it now has 30 DPS up from its 25, which is pretty huge. I don't really know the thought process on this one.
If any cards would have gotten a buff, I would have never expected the skeletons to get one.
I don't know if it pushes them to OP territory, but there's kind of a thing about micro buffing. And where you like this, well, one Curse Bearer, as Mr. Luz points out, who needs Warrior when you have a Curse Bearer? They're both filled in that 3 mana slot. When Curse Bearer came out, it basically replaced Warrior. And
yeah,
when it replaced Warrior, it was like, what's the point of having 2 cards that fill the same design slot? And buffing the damage on Curse Bearer just pushes out Warrior even further. So
the thing is, if I ever wanted to play a Warrior, I would just play it whenever I need to. I need a 3 mana tank, and for that reason, I'm just going to play Warrior because it's got like 75 more HP. But in any other situation, I would never pick Warrior.
Mm-hmm. I do like part of the rationale for this is Toll of the Dead. That card was the card that I thought was the most exciting to build around when it came out. And it didn't see a whole lot of action initially because it was hard to set up. And you basically didn't get it set up till perk 3. So unless you're playing a deck that survived for very long, it just didn't seem that relevant. It's just weird that Curse Bearer and just feels at such a similar design space to Warrior. It's just kind of awkward. I probably would have gone for a 10 health buff on the units, just to make it so they weren't one shot by a cleaver. Would probably have been my direction that I would have gone with this. Because that's why, that's probably where I would have gone. Is I would have done like a small health buff as opposed to a damage buff. But
my thing is, I would have just buffed the Undying Skeleton and not buff Curse Bearer.
Well, this is where I have some issues with the design philosophy. Is where they tie similar looking units to the same stats.
Yeah.
I understand why they do it. And it feels like now that that's kind of their thing, they're kind of locked into it. But it makes it so when you have to buff one unit, you have to buff both. And that created the issue with Drone Walker and Aimbot, making it hard to buff one without buffing the other. Which they actually did something I like, and they gave the shield to Aimbot and made it a fun unit. So that was actually, they found a good spot with that. And I liked that change. And the last change, before we talk about Guardian, is Xiao Long. So Xiao Long went from 25 damage to 20 damage. I think a lot of people in the competitive scene don't really mind Xiao Long getting nerfed. I don't. Doesn't really fix the problem, but but it's probably better than what it was.
But
before.
it makes it a bit less complicated.
Xiao Long's oppressive, and for multiple reasons. But being like what's the next flying range unit in cost? Drone Buzzers, and Drone Buzzers die to Daggerfall. It's simply that. Like, if you had another flying ranged unit that didn't die to Daggerfall, people would play it. Like, people want a flying ranged unit in that slot. But the lowest cost flying range unit in the game is Xiao Long. The next one is Drone Buzzers, which dies to Daggerfall, and then after that, it's 5 costs with Soul Stealer, which sees a lot of play. So. Like, people want
you would never go for the buzzers.
Yeah, flying ranged units, people want to play.
Xiao is just... I feel like they should take another route with Xiao. Because the damage isn't really important, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's still a problem when there's a massive amount of Xiaos in the field. Mm-hmm. But the damage isn't really important, and I feel that what's important is the fact that it keeps getting a shield every time you cast a spell, because it really punishes the people that want to stack up an arcane golem with Milloween,
Mm-hmm.
and they only have 4 spells in hand, and they feel that they have to play it, otherwise they would just float mana.
Mm-hmm. I've heard.
And yeah,
Have heard a suggestion for this is that his perk can only activate, having his perk only activate once as a nerf.
yeah,
And that's actually probably the direction I would have liked to see it taken. But
yeah,
didn't happen.
100%.
Yeah, that would have been where I wanted to see that taken. All right. So our last segments, we have 10 minutes to do this. Guardian changes. All right. So I think you're in game. I'm in game. Okay. First, say what the changes are. Guardian now is now 5 mana. It got a 20 damage buff, and it only protects crystal elves.
Yeah. Oh, at first I thought it was going to be a broken card, like not broken, like dead card.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, oh, actually, wait, Crystal Sentry, like Crystal Archers,
Mm-hmm.
Escorts, and then yeah,
And
it just feels like a way better Crystal construct.
Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing if I can find my deck list for this. Otherwise, I'm gonna need to go rebuild it. As we both built a deck for taking advantage of the Guardian. Where did I put that?
Was it a Milloween deck?
It was a Milloween deck.
Oh,
When I'm done searching, once I find it, I'll put it on screen.
all right.
Whatever, we'll go build it real quick.
If you'd like, I can type deck in chat with mine, and you can showcase it.
Yeah, you can put your deck in. You can go talk about that real quick while I go build this deck.
All right.
All right. So, hold on. I need to give you guys some screen capture. All right. The live scene. And this needs to be capturing the right game. There's no technical difficulties here. Shut up, guys.
Never. It can't be a Minion Masters stream without technical difficulties. We already know this.
All right. Well, we're going to do it the other way. We'll do a display capture. Is there some odd reason? All right. Good enough.
Good enough.
Here's Jules' deck. I guess I should probably take down the Master Talk Academy. I'll move this to the top. All right. Okay, Jules' deck. So I'm sure you are in game right now. So
yeah,
this is basically just a Crystal Elf deck and taking advantage of the Stormbringer Crystal Elf build. And I think we're going to go and play a match of 2s with these decks here. Let me build mine real quick. I went for a standard Bridge Shrine. A Bridge Shrine Billow deck based around this. And get that guy.
While you get ready, I'm going to send you an invite.
All right. Send it through Steam.
Steam? All right.
Actually, no. It works on Discord now. Forgot.
It should, but
yeah.
I think
I had some technical difficulties, guys, during the tournament. I think we got a mention from Florian that he's got a deck on the leaderboard that is unbeatable. So let's go see if we can go find that.
Unbeatable.
Unbeatable deck.
I don't like that word.
Oh, this is definitely an unbeatable deck. What I'm seeing here. It's got 2 units to res, but who needs more units when you're for Florian?
Unbeatable.
All right. So this is the deck that I had put together. Actually, we'll do the Magma Storm, and we will do 1v1 here. And All right, so when you're putting together your deck for the Guardian deck building challenge, what were your thought processes, or what like when you built this deck? Why do you want to use? Why did you want to go with the Stormbringer list?
So the reason why I wanted to go with Stormbringer is mainly because of the marksmanship,
Mm-hmm.
and also because I'm really used to playing the Stormbringer with the arcane crystal, the crystal archers,
Uh-huh.
and I feel like the Guardian is a really nice addition.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt obliged to also bring a black hole, mainly because, well, Beam of Dooms and Magma Storms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a good addition, and will probably be really helpful against you, or helpful for you, as my deck is running a Magma Storm.
No, bit too late there. But that Brit Shrine is actually low. So
Yeah, you actually managed to get some poke onto it. So you're going to see something funny with Guardian and these Golem here.
is it actually going to shield it?
Well, it does. This is why I was running it. But he runs right through it quite easily.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's no... it doesn't push properly.
Here's the black hole.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good inclusion of the black hole. And yeah, it allows you to get onto the other side of the map and create quite a frustrating push here.
The thing about the deck is that also it's a really, really fast cycle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you got to that Guardian pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You're getting a lot of damage on my face already.
I didn't mean to do that.
Will I survive?
Oh, the Guardian was really good.
Yeah, I was able to survive just in time, but definitely puts me at an awkward situation because I probably want to heal up everything here. And that was
it's
good
okay,
timing.
I thought it was,
Good
Yeah.
timing.
I thought it was actually not going to be enough.
Before you
Okay.
can build up a push, I figured it's just worth going for the Magma Storm.
Yeah.
I just knowing what you're playing, I really don't know to deal with that. Florian suggested trying Spawn of Fury to double up the Golem and then play the Guardian. That actually sounds like a fun way to try this deck. I actually don't have Spawn of Fury yet. I never unlocked that. I didn't even think about that card because I actually haven't played using it. And I think just short of being able to survive here. I think you kill me, and yeah, that was game. Alright, so those are the two decks that we built. I'm going to show, here's back on screen. Actually, I'll be able to show it in this post game. And we have just a few minutes to do questions, and then we'll be wrapping up the stream today. So this is the Guardian deck that Jules brought. This is actually probably going to be a pretty good one for people to run on ladder. It's got a fast cycle. It's definitely focused around getting this Border Patrol mixed with the Guardian, and then maybe throwing an Arcanist behind it, and then just sitting on that 6+ mana, and you can create pretty frustrating push.
And you can actually just save up to 11 mana and play the Guardian, so you can always stay up the 6 with Mana Surge active.
All right. So back to talk show. Okay, so we have a little bit of time for questions. I think I'm going to ignore the one Schilling said. If anybody has any questions or anything that people thought about our talk show, we have a few minutes to talk about that before we go. Oh, how would you fix Perk 3 Milo? Okay, so I actually have a few thoughts on that. The first change I want to do is I want to up the movement speed of Milo's Golem just flat out to 4. So currently it's at like 2, I think. Getting the Milo Golem moving a little bit faster would be Nice. Then on top of that, I think I should start at maybe 4 stacks. I think I just lower the starting stack count. It's not like it's close to being fine. It's actually not as insane as like. Okay, I'd say a lot of people like put it as like the most overpowered thing, but yeah, if you bring its move speed up to 4, so it moves across bridges faster. You see an empowered. Yeah, I do think there's going to be an empowered Soul Stealer nerf at some point. I'm not really.
There has to be.
There's going to be for sure. I bet we'll probably see. Like, I actually don't know what they're doing. I would expect a nerf probably hopefully in this patch that is coming in July. I think like 17th. I believe it's the next patch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think so.
Ideally, we'll see something then. I think we'll see a Morelia nerf as well. Nerfing Screaming Scrat. I actually do. I would nerf Screaming Scrat. I think for my. I don't know. What is your thoughts on nerfing Screaming Scrat?
Maybe just remove the taunt.
See,
Or it's a really rough card to think of a nerf.
I kind of just want to drop the base health down so it dies quicker when it's just tanking for other units.
Yeah,
I
okay.
think currently its health is 90. Yeah, and I would probably want to bring it down to 60. Oh, okay. So the master I'd probably buff right now is I'd actually go for a Diona buff.
The light protects,
and
so
I would
does
do-
my crossbows.
What I would like to do is I'd like to make it so it takes. I'd like to up her auto attack damage from 20 to 25. I think she just needs to be. I want her to be someone who. I do want to do a buff. I want to buff the defensive parts of Diona. I do know how strong she is, but I want to buff the defensive part of that master. So currently, I think her weak part is in defending. And I would like to push her into a zone where she's the kind of master that you get to ignore face. And I think if you buffed her defensive capabilities and made it so she you could focus on offense. The other one that I would like to buff is of course Ratbow, but I always want Ratbow buffs because Ratbow is my favorite master. And my one thought on Ratbow is maybe if it was like every 10th thing that gets spawned, you could do you'd spawn armored scrat. Like every 10th spawn would be an armored scrat or something. I think would be my change to Ratbow. I don't know if that'd bring him into relevancy for other people, but
It sounds really fun.
yeah, I think it'd be fun to to make you want to cycle more, and that seems like the most obvious way without completely changing him. I heard a suggestion where you increase his range to global when you have like 10 or more scrats on the field or something like that. Or gamer's suggestion here, every 100th spawn could be Jolo. Or maybe every 100th spawn could be a Colossus scrat. They could make a new unit for it. Yeah,
like Nervous Scrat.
yeah, bringing back his old perk 3. Every 1,000 spawn is Mjolnir. Yeah, there's a lot of things I'd like to see changed. I wouldn't mind seeing stuff to. I mean, there's like a lot of masters that feel a little bit old, so I think they should. It's kind of a tough one. Is having wolves keep the buff is like kind of the design space that they built them into. What I would say if they were going to change it though, is that they'd have to buff wolves flat out.
In my opinion, I would say
Yeah, you could buff. Well, you could actually remove the bus transferring and buff it so. Because right now, Ravager has a huge incentive advantage over everybody running wolves.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird that Ravager should get this bonus over everybody else.
On the buffs, I'd say let the wolves keep all the buffs except for the extra HP. Because it makes no sense to actually that they actually keep extra HP.
Yeah, that seems like a odd change. I think if you change that, I'd be fine with where wolves are right now. But I think Dewey is right. Thank you for the stream, as he said to us. So thank you, Dewey. But I think it's also time that we get going. So thanks, everybody, for sticking around. And I hope to see you guys next week. We'll be moving to Sundays, and we'll have different subjects to talk about and a new deck challenge. So see you next week. Bye.
Bye.